Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney Save. Today we are finally doing Arendelle Castle. A lot of you know I have been working on this castle for probably the better part of 2 weeks now, on and off when I could, and I'm really excited to finally have it behind me. I have to say, I enjoyed the process of this castle a lot more than I think I originally thought I would, but it's still a really large build. We are working on the 50 by 50 at the top of the mountain in Mount Komorebi, the last lot in the little frozen district that I've been working on, and I knew I wanted to go ahead and do this castle before we left this neighborhood and not save it till the end. Last time I did a castle was Maleficent's, and I saved it until the very last lot for Forgotten Hollow, and I ended up regretting it a lot because I was ready to move on and I couldn't because I had basically the largest build still left to do for that world. So for this one, I felt like I really needed to jump into it while I felt good about it and while I was already on the topic of Frozen with all of the other related builds that we had been working on and whatnot. And of course, besides the size of this lot, it's a very intimidating one. It's very, very detailed. I was a little bit worried that the 50 by 50 was not going to provide enough space to do a castle of this size, and it's Frozen, so it's one that everybody really loves. It's a castle that a lot of people love, like it's probably somebody's favorite castle. And it's the first Disney princess slash Disney queen castle of the save file. The only other castles we've done so far is Maleficent's and Horn King's, but those were villains castles, and they're not as well known, they're not as iconic. This one, you can sort of visualize it in your head, and you've probably seen it multiple times in both of the movies, so you generally know what it looks like, and it's somebody's favorite, so I just, of course, wanted to knock it out of the park and just do the absolute best that I possibly could. And besides the main castle portion, which is where, obviously, Anna and Elsa primarily live, you have this wall that sort of entraps the entire castle and makes up the royal grounds, and I wanted to include it as well, because in my head, that really is the castle. It's the combination of all of the things. Now, I want to address right off the bat why I've chosen to put Arendelle Castle in this neighborhood, because this was a debate even amongst patrons and I where we were going to put this castle. It's a coastal castle. A lot of the footage from the movie shows ships coming in and out of the harbor, and if you're a fan of Frozen, you know that Arendelle is sort of located down on a coast, sort of at the bottom of a mountain. And I think this castle could very easily be moved to a separate world, but up until this point, we have really tried to theme the worlds the best that we possibly could. There are outliers for each of the worlds. There are lots here and there that are maybe like the one-offs that don't quite fit for the rest of the world, and that's for something that I felt like it was too good of an opportunity not to do just because I hadn't used the movie there so far. But for this one, we had all of these other Frozen lots at the top of the mountain, and there was one 50 by 50 down at the bottom, but I already sort of know what I wanted to do with it, and it's no secret that the rest of this world is going to have a lot of Mulan theming. So to me, I really wanted to keep all of the Frozen stuff together, all of the Mulan stuff together, if I could, and even just to keep this castle in this world so that it felt more cohesive with the other lots surrounding it, versus moving it to a different world and then sort of having to decide, well, what do we even put here and what kind of a lot is going to go on the other one. It made more sense in my head for this to all just be in one area if I could help it. And I know some people aren't going to agree with that decision just because of the location, but to me, it made a lot of sense. And I also really like the fact that this castle is like permanently stuck in snow. All of the lots that are located up at the top of the mountain have snow 24/7. And it reminded me of the first Frozen movie where Elsa kind of like entraps the entire castle in snow. So to me, it made a lot of sense. I'm really happy with the decision. I love how it looks on the overview map. And if you wanted to move it, you absolutely could, but that was just kind of the reasoning behind my decision. And also, just to put out as a premise, it's always possible that we can move stuff later on, especially if we get other worlds that seem to apply to certain themings better. I bring up the example of Belle's Village quite a bit. Belle's Village is currently located in Willow Creek, and it's not necessarily the most fitting compared to the rest of the world. I like the way that it looks in the little neighborhood cove that I've done it on. I like that you can sort of look around and see the entire village and that everything's really located together. And then the idea was also that that Beast Castle would end up going in Windenburg, so they're very separate from one another, and there would be like sort of a journey between Belle's Village and the castle, a little bit of distance. But obviously, if we ever got a very, very French world or a sort of village-inspired world, there would be a really great opportunity to move something like that. So every lot that goes down in the Disney save, it is where it is for the time being, but realistically, as we continue to get more stuff for The Sims, there's always the chance that we could decide to rearrange things and have to go back to previous worlds and even maybe fill a couple of things in. So keep that in mind, but ultimately I really do stand by this decision. I think that it came out really nice, and it's my favorite castle of the worlds so far. It has me very excited for what we're going to do for future castles, and that's really opposite of what I thought I would feel at the end of doing this process. I have to be honest and say that this castle is just not one of my favorites in Disney. It doesn't really hold any nostalgia for me, and I was excited to attempt the first Disney Princess Castle of the save, but I wasn't necessarily excited that this was the first one. Some of my favorites are obviously Eric's Castle. I love The Little Mermaid, and I'm also a really big fan of Jasmine's Castle, or the Palace, but I thought by the end of doing this, I was going to be completely burnt out and be so done with castles and like, I don't want to do another one. Please do not make me do another one. However, I kind of feel the opposite. I feel like I'm ready to go. Like I could jump right into Beast Castle right now, if I'm being honest with you. It's in a different world, so I'm not going to do that. But this didn't burn me out in the way that I thought that it would. I enjoyed the entire process overall. I basically picked at it here and there over stream. A lot of the exterior shell and the initial building process was done off stream, and then we picked at some of the rooms here and there and some of the exterior stuff throughout the course of the last 2 weeks. And then I had one day where I sat down and I did a ton of work on this place. Stuff that is all not going to be included in today's video because, as you can see, besides the fact that this is massive, it's also 5 stories and incredibly detailed. There are rooms upon rooms that just could not be included in a video. The video is already way too long as it is, and I've edited down a ton of footage, like 9 to 10 hours of footage, completely edited down into 40-something minutes, so do bear with me. However, there was a ton that had to be done, and I just didn't record any of it, and I really enjoyed it. I took the entire day, and there was never like a point where I was like, oh, this sucks, I don't want to do it anymore. I was enjoying the aesthetic of the entire castle. It really does help that Frozen is a newer Disney movie. So there's a lot of really great reference of Anna going through the castle and singing, and it makes it so much easier because I didn't have to make as many decisions. And we've already done the village rental where I've gone through ideas for what packs to include in Frozen themed builds, what type of furniture and theming and things that I've already basically used in other builds. So I didn't have to make as many choices, which I think is really what becomes some of the most taxing parts of doing large scale builds. Like, where do things go? What type of furniture? What packs? And a lot of that stuff was already decided when we got here. So it ended up being just a really smooth process overall. I think the most annoying part of doing this one is I thought because Frozen is such a new movie that there would be great layouts of this castle to really showcase what we have going on internally. Where are Anna and Elsa's rooms located? How many other rooms do we have? The spiral staircase, the gallery. Like, I just thought it was going to be so laid out. And I'm sure there is somewhere where there's better reference of the individual layout of every single room of this castle. I'm almost positive that it exists somewhere because for a lot of the newer Disney movies, this is the case. However, in my research for this, I could not find anything that made sense to me with this shape of the castle in mind. So it was a very similar experience to Cruella de Vil's, where I did have some idea of what the interior looked like, but then you look at the exterior and it doesn't line up and it doesn't make perfect sense. So what became a problem when doing the layout specifically was that there are a lot of scenes in the movie where either Anna or Elsa are going down really long decorated hallways with windows, and then you have doors that are entrances to probably rooms and dining and those type of things. So to be able to keep rooms but maintain the long hallways in this place was no short of a nightmare. And you will notice that in certain locations of the castle, it just became entirely impossible. I was trying to maintain these long 2 to 3 tile hallways, but it was making some of the rooms so small that it took away from the royal and over-the-top feeling that a castle should have. Here and there, it was okay. On the main entranceway, I was able to do one. I had originally put one on the very top floor, which is where Anna and Elsa's bedrooms are located, but I ended up turning it and completely taking it away because it just made their rooms too small. And I'll talk about it a little bit more when we actually go upstairs to decorate some of the interior stuff, but it was probably the biggest struggle of doing this whole thing. And the layout, I probably rewrote for this castle at least 5 times. I'm really, really happy with the decisions that I made ultimately. I have to say, like, overall, I'm walking away from this build really feeling confident in it. So, and that rarely happens, especially with the bigger builds and castles or builds that are ones that I know many people are very fond of, and so people are inevitably going to be a little bit picky of. I'm very happy with how this came out, and it's rare, so I'm not too worried about it. But I did want to make sure that we include some interior footage today. I also want to put out a premise that because of the scale of this build and how much we have going on here, I will do a tour video. And I've promised you guys that in the past, that if a build is way too big and I've had to cut a lot of footage out, we'll do a tour video. So look forward to that in the next few days, probably somewhere between the Sunday, Monday range if I can get it done in time. But for today's video, I've done the throne room / ballroom, the gallery, the living room from Frozen 2 with the charade scene, Anna and Elsa's bedrooms, and I think the chapel at the very end, aka the coronation room where Elsa is sworn in to be queen. Other than that, there is a library, a study, a servant's quarters with 4 bedrooms, closets galore, 2 kitchens, dining. I'm sure I'm missing something. Olaf's room was also cut for time. There's about 150 bathrooms in this place that I just couldn't fathom putting the footage in for. There's also a room for Kristoff. Kristoff and Anna will not share a bedroom as the save file starts out, and I made that decision for 2 reasons. One, Anna's room is very her, and I just felt like when I was decorating it that Kristoff would hate it, hate it, hate it. However, it's totally your decision. Obviously, when you play, you can move them in together. I did give Kristoff a separate room. I gave him some space and I gave him some different decor that I feel like fits a lot better with his character. And also another thing, I feel like for the time period, it's not completely crazy that they wouldn't share a room. They're not technically married, and even when you did get married back then, it wasn't always customary for you to share a room with your significant other. Sometimes it was only done for like the honeymoon period, and then they would have separate rooms after, or it's just like, it depends. So I didn't feel like it was totally crazy that they would even have separate rooms. Sometimes I want a separate room. Like, I think the idea of doing a shared bedroom is kind of like a weird modern crazy concept, because even sometimes between my boyfriend Nate and I, we have different decor styles and things that we would like for our bedroom, and sometimes it wouldn't be so crazy at the idea of like doing separate bedrooms. And I've even heard of couples doing that even like today, so I think it's kind of cool and unique. But you can make the decision when you move in as to what you want to do with them. They will also be unmarried, because I don't believe at the end of Frozen 2 that they are married quite yet. I can't remember, if I'm being honest. I've definitely frozen myself out to the point where my knowledge is like so scattered right now, and I have like so much, but I'm just burnt out on the knowledge of it all. So somebody let me know, but I don't think that they do officially. So they will probably be either just a regular boyfriend and girlfriend couple, or they will be engaged in some way, but they'll live here. Olaf also has his own room, very different from the rest of the castle, but I'll show it more in the tour video so that you guys can see it in a little bit more detail, and we can talk about some of the decisions that were made for stuff like that that just won't be included in the video. But I did feel like the throne room was probably a really good room to include for this. It's very significant. I was a little bit surprised at the color scheming of this castle. I did remember in my head that it was quite colorful, and one of the things that I've noticed as a general theming throughout a lot of the Frozen movies is that there are patterns literally everywhere. Patterns on the walls, patterns on the curtains. Every single piece of wood has some kind of carved pattern into it, patterns on the floors. It's a lot. It's not generally something that I would make the decision for, and I know for a fact that other castles do not have this same aesthetic, but it makes it very unique. But overall, I feel like it's just a lot sometimes, the combination of all the different patterns and textures that we have going on, but it's true to the movie, so obviously I'm going to replicate it to the best of my ability. But the colors on top of that, besides the patterns, I was just surprised at how much red is in this castle. In my head, I didn't really remember it that way, because I think when I think of Frozen, I think of blues and purples and greens and magentas and sort of like the spectrum of colors that they dress Anna and Elsa in. But a lot of the hallways were red, a lot of the throne room was red, a lot of like anything that was a common area of the castle is basically red and gold and deep browns, and then maybe some pops of white here and there. Again, more color combinations that I really traditionally would not make the decision in choosing, but it's unique, if anything. It makes this castle feel very put together, and it's going to feel very different compared to a lot of the other ones. Even if you just think about, for example, again, Eric's castle, completely different aesthetic. That's going to be so open, so like curtains billowing everywhere, light colors. I'm sure there are some rooms in the castle that have some darker colors and some like royal rich blues and purples that I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but it's a beach castle, so it'll be quite different. And for Jasmine's castle, we'll have a huge array of colors and really rich like teals and oranges, and some of the newer packs especially are really going to come in handy. So if anything, it's just going to be a really cool, unique experience no matter where you go. And I was also surprised at the fact that the throne room is seemingly pretty small, according to the scenes in the movie. It's definitely the biggest room in the house, don't get me wrong, and I tried to depict that here, but it's a little bit of a smaller ballroom than you would originally imagine. It worked out a lot better because we're working on a limited space for this castle, but it just wasn't as big as I had remembered it in my head. There were sort of two little bump outs to each side of the throne room that were more private, and it looked like areas where people could sit off to the side and maybe chat. There was possibly some chairs and tables in there, so I did pop those in there as well. And then the concept of the throne, like this is going to become a regular issue if we don't get some packs in The Sims. I've already had this problem when it comes to doing Maleficent's castle, because most of the time these castles have a throne of some kind, and thrones are not really an item in The Sims. We only have one, and it is an item from Get Famous that is technically a prop, and it doesn't have any other color swatches. It only comes in red, which is a problem because in the future that is not going to be useful at all. But for this build, it was almost identical to the throne that they have for Elsa, so I did go ahead and size it down and pop it into the end of the ballroom, and it works out really well. In the future, I'm probably going to have to use chairs and just size them up or try to put some stuff around them to make them look more elegant if we don't get a couple more thrones or maybe some recolors. But it's just kind of an item that we don't really have, probably because we don't really have a medieval pack or a royal pack or anything that would be anywhere close to that. So fingers crossed for something like that in the future. I know I bring that up every video, but it would really be so helpful for me and the Disney Save, and I'm sure a lot of you would super enjoy it. Now, the very top floor of the castle is Anna and Elsa's bedroom, and you can already see based on this footage what I'm talking about for trying to maintain these longer 2 to 3 tile hallways and still keep really large rooms. So it doesn't really work here. I'm trying to get everything to fit. It's kind of an awkward layout. I wanted to go ahead and include the footage because this is really where I made the decision about how the rooms were going to be decorated and show like the fireplace construction and the wallpaper choices and floor and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, this is what the rooms look like. However, the final version of the build, I've removed this long hallway at the back part of the castle, and the staircase actually just comes up right through the middle of the two rooms in that little bump in the middle that I currently have marked as a bathroom. It's going to have stairs there, and then I pushed the wall all the way out so that they could have those extra 2 tiles per bedroom, and it helps make them feel a lot more spacious. It feels a lot more royal. Ultimately, one of the biggest problems I had in my head is that there's a servant's quarters at the bottom part of this castle underneath, underneath. And because it's a basement, I was able to make all of the rooms whatever size I wanted to. And the servants' rooms were actually larger than Anna and Elsa's rooms because I didn't have size restrictions. So it was a little bit of a problem in my head. Although I think that Anna and Elsa would be very giving to servants and they wouldn't lack as far as decor or bedrooms or anything that they basically needed, I didn't think they would go so far as to maybe do bedrooms that were larger than their own, or maybe if someone else had made that decision, even like parental wise or advisor wise, it just didn't seem correct. So everything that you're seeing for the bedrooms, it's done exactly that way in the final version, but the rooms are just a little bit larger and feel a lot more royal overall, and I like them. But it did mean that we were going to have to remove the bathroom on this floor. That was another thing that I was really struggling with. I wanted to put a bathroom up here so that Anna and Elsa didn't technically have to go downstairs to use the restroom. But you'll notice that even at this current layout, the bathroom is blocking the exit to like the final upstairs deck area at the top of the castle, and it was gonna be an awkward layout no matter what if I decided to do it this way, so it was just best to remove it, honestly. And there are a million other bathrooms in this place. There's literally one right downstairs that they can go to very easily, but if you didn't want that one, there's 10 others, so don't worry about the lack of bathrooms. That's not the case. I just wanted to maybe have like a suite where each of them got a private bathroom as well. But as you get up the floors of this castle, the rooms got smaller and smaller, so it didn't make sense for me to cut off some of the bedroom space for a bathroom, if that makes sense. The fireplaces in Anna and Elsa's rooms are very different than anything I've done in the save, and it's one of those things where I went into it knowing that they had like very unique fireplaces that stuck out in my head, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to pull it off. I want to say that it's obviously not exactly like how it's shown in the movie, but I think the idea of it is really cool. So I did use one of the platforms, just bump it up one little tile so that it's a little bit higher up off of the ground. There's a fence that kind of looks like a low metal guarding type of fence, and there's actually something very similar to it in the movie that I think is more likely just one of those dividers or one of those things that you sort of set in front of your fireplace to keep from going in and out, whatever, for children or for animals, what it may be. So I popped that little fence down, and then the newer fireplace from Snowy Escape, which can be a little bit modern looking, and I was initially very intimidated at the thought of using it, but it's still very open, and I've used it in a lot of other Frozen builds so far. It's the primary fireplace that I used in Latte Go, so it works, I feel, and it has these really elegant little patterns on the side that is very reminiscent of everything else that is in the Frozen movies. But in the movie, the top of the fireplace is connected straight to this big panel on the wall that kitty corners and is probably just one massive chimney that leads out of the castle. They both have one of these in their rooms, and I know it's a specific type of fireplace that we just don't traditionally have here in the US, I don't think, but I really wanted to make sure that I put something that was very reminiscent of it. So I took some of the vents that you can actually put over the tops of stoves and faced them right up against one another, and then sort of lowered it a little bit onto the fireplace so that you don't see the top part of the fireplace and it looks like it could be sort of connected and leading straight out of the castle. It was an idea. I actually really, really like it. And it helps make the fireplace area look very unique compared to just popping any old regular fireplace down. Not sure how functional it's going to be, if I'm completely honest with you. I'll have to play test it and see if I can get it to actually work properly. But it's one of those things that might be too good not to use despite the functionality. And you might be questioning the angle as well, turning it sort of sideways instead of just putting it right up against the wall. But again, that was just something that the movie had depicted, and so I decided that we were going to go with it. The other thing that I think is sort of surprising is Anna and Elsa's rooms are like traditional pink and purple. And in my head, again, I really didn't remember that to be the case. I would think like blue and green, really. But Anna's room is pink. Elsa's room is purple. They do obviously have other shades of things going on, but it's just, this is what I was talking about when I said that this room does not feel like something that Kristoff would enjoy at all. And I could definitely see when her and Kristoff got married, just redoing the room, because because it seems like it would be a lot for him. Not that he would probably complain if I'm completely honest, but it doesn't feel like it embodies both of their personalities. It's just very Anna. And thank God for the platforming system, because I was able to do some really unique features in this room that wouldn't have been able to be available a few updates ago, including just doing the little bump right up next to the window where you could sit and read a book. I love doing little cuts like that. In the movie, those two Strangerville windows are replaced by like a perfectly triangular window, which is all over the castle, if I'm honest, are these like beautiful triangle windows that take up the roof peaks and are very unique and beautiful, but we don't have anything like it in The Sims. It's one of those things that I would definitely love to be able to come back and update this castle with some more stuff that is really, really reminiscent of Frozen, if we ever get the ability to do so. But for now, it makes sense to use the Strangerville windows. I've used them in all of my other Frozen themed builds, and they're probably some of the closest that we have. I actually replaced those two with the one larger one that comes with Strangerville that is more triangular. And like I said, the room is actually rotated in the final version, but you'll get to see it in the tour video and see like how it is sort of a little bit different on the tile space, just based after what I did decide to change after this footage was done. While we're on the topic, I also want to point out something that is very interesting to these castles that I've noticed. First of all, almost none of the windows in the castle had curtains on them. So you will notice a lack of curtains throughout this entire place. The only place I think that I have actually done any curtains is the ballroom, because a lot of the windows had panels that would slide over the window and then you could pull them open from the inside. We don't, again, have anything like that, and it really wasn't worth it to me to clutter up the wall to put something next to every single window that made it look like the shutters were open. It doesn't make sense to me. So I left them blank, but it was weird that I thought it was weird, at least a little bit, that there was just no curtains around. And the other thing that was really strange to me is the fact that a lot of this castle had tile all over the place. It's not a style that I would really think to put tile like almost anywhere except for maybe a bathroom. And it was everywhere, specifically in bedrooms. I noticed when I was looking at references, it appeared that there were sometimes like a more decorative tile in the bedrooms, which is really cold. And I know that in the movie, Arendelle Castle is located on a coast and it does go through seasons, but if you just think about it, I don't know, like tile in a bedroom is not my first decision for any type of a home that goes through seasons at all. If you are from a location that does not have as much change in temperature like seasonally, it's different, but I feel like it was really, really weird to me when I was trying to decide for the different rooms. And then of course I'm trying to keep Anna and Elsa's rooms somewhat cohesive because they are very similar. The only difference really being the colors. And so ideally what I would have been able to do is use the same wallpaper but do one in a pink and one in a purple, and use the same floor tile but one in a pink and one in a purple. And it's just never that simple. The colors and the shades specifically for pinks and purples in this game is very weird and very limited. I think despite all of the packs that we have gotten so far, between pink and purple floor options, there is literally a handful, and some of them are like very brightly colored, weird, like the spa day ones that glow, or there's one from City Living that is like a floor that's what is it? It's like wood, and it's very, very brightly colored. I kind of don't understand it. So as far as getting anything to match, that was almost never going to happen, but we can at least still try to keep a very similar color style. I was happy that the Get Famous beds came in both colors that worked for each of the rooms. Another thing that you'll notice in this castle is a lot of paranormal stuff, which is one of the newer packs that came out, and I've also actually used the Country Living kit in the bottom floor of the castle in the servants' quarters kitchen area. It came out towards the last part of me finishing the castle, and I hadn't done the kitchen yet for the servants area. So as an opportunity to go ahead and use like one of the new kits, I did think that it fit really well, and I went ahead and used it for them. There is a second kitchen located in the castle that is more like the general kitchen for presumably Anna and Elsa or any other royals in the castle, and that one does not use the Country Living kit. I do, since we have a little bit of time anyway, want to talk a little bit about the kits, especially because I know that you guys are going to ask me. I am interested in the idea of kits. I am sort of excited about the price point. I think that the price point is better than I originally thought. In my head, $4.99 US, and I know that this doesn't scale depending on which country you are from, but in my head, $4.99 US was probably the max that I was okay with for the price point. And ideally, I really don't mind at all whenever The Sims does content at all. Like, it could be anything. If they put out a stuff pack, game pack, expansion pack, I'm never annoyed or upset that they're working on something new for the game. What comes in the form of annoyance is usually just like, how much is it going to cost? And what are you getting for the value of like the price point of the pack? So to me, before they announced the prices, I was like, internally, if you do kits, if this is the new thing that we're going to do, which as a concept, I'm not against the idea of, I think it would be really great to get like little living room sets and clutter sets and painting sets and maybe even like a medieval set, fingers crossed, and have those be available as small purchasable things. Hopefully they go on sale every once in a while. You can get them for a good 25-50% off, but $4.99 was my max, that I would be okay with that. So I was really pleasantly surprised that they put the build and buy one out, the country living kit out at that price point. That got me really excited. At first, I really didn't understand the concept of the other two because cast to me is one of those things that I just don't care for as much. The only reason I currently care for Create a Sim is because I'm working on a save file that requires me to use vanilla content to the game. So whenever they add cast stuff, I'm like, how can I use this for the save file? I don't play The Sims other than that currently, so there's really no need for anything else, and so I can't inherently be excited for anything that doesn't work for my save file. And 90s Athleisure is definitely not one of those things. I cannot come up with anything off the top of my head that's Disney related that will be like such a score for. I will inevitably end up using some of it at some point, but it's not like my top idea ever. However, I'm a 90s baby. I really love 90s stuff, and so just in general, I think the clothes are really cute. And again, I think the price point is fair. I was really against the Dust the Bus kit at first because of the fact that it comes with 5 items, but after watching the live stream that they did where they explained the pack and it comes with multiple aspirations, it's really a gameplay pack. So if you like that sort of gameplay, if you want your houses to have levels of cleanliness, if you like the Dust Bunnies concept, it's gonna be up your alley. You'll probably enjoy it. But to me, my first worry was, how can I turn this off? Because with these bigger mansion builds and these castle builds that I do for the Disney save, installing one kit causing my castles to get filthy all the time and having Sims run rampant around trying to clean constantly was going to be a huge issue. But apparently there is a way to turn it off. So just besides that, if you're buying it for the 5 vacuums, obviously I don't think that's worth the value. I do not think that $4.99 for 5 vacuums is ever going to be worth it. But the gameplay, if you are somebody who plays the game regularly and you enjoy that sort of play style, it looks pretty good, I have to say. And eventually I will pick them all up. I did pick up the country living one right away. Kitchen stuff is always going to be up my alley. Build and buy is probably 9 times out of 10 always going to be up my alley. And I'll wait for the other two. I'll see if there's a sale. I'll see if there's a moment for maybe I need something from one of them and I didn't realize up until that point that I was going to need it. But in general, if we're talking about the idea of kits, I'm sort of on board with the concept of it as long as they keep the price points fair. And I think if they were to go any more than what they're currently doing, I would not be okay with it. But we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it. I'll definitely let you know how I feel about the whole thing as we go throughout. As far as new packs that are coming to The Sims, obviously there's no real news right now, I don't think. And usually for some of these bigger builds, I would take an opportunity to talk about it. But I think it's safe to say that we're hopefully going to get some kind of a generations and or farming pack this year. Hopefully they don't try and squeeze the idea of both into one pack, but I feel like that's coming. And on that topic, actually, horses were actually a pretty big deal for this build, and I would have been able to love to add a few things related to horses here. So it's again one of those builds that if we do get a horses related pack or a farming pack that comes with them in any kind of capacity, I will absolutely love to come back and add some stuff here. I would love to add Elsa's water horse in some way and be able to put the water horse here as like a very special, elegant blue horse, very different than anything else in the save, I'm sure. And there's actually some stables outside that I decided to leave empty because I'm so hoping that we get horses in some capacity that it almost felt like a waste of my time to go ahead and start decorating, only for me to have to take away what's in there and replace it with hopefully stables and hay bales and horses later on. So we will see. And of course, if we don't get it, I will come back and I will fix it. But when you do download this castle, if you get it off of the gallery eventually, after I've playtested it and caught up on a lot of the other builds that I have not uploaded to the gallery, you will notice that there are 2 buildings on the castle grounds that are empty. And it's just done intentionally this time around. I've done that in the past. I don't like to do it often, but it's one of those things I really just didn't need to decorate it right now because it's so clearly supposed to be a stable. So you did get to see a little bit of the footage from the gallery. The gallery is from the scenes where Anna is going around the castle and she's singing about finally being able to like get out and have a party. You get to see the gallery. And you also get to see the living room from Frozen 2, the scenes where they are playing charades and having like a little family night. That room is entirely based off of Frozen 2. There is a dining room down here. There's also a kitchen and a bathroom, like a main bathroom with multiple toilets that I'm kind of calling like a powder room. So that's all included on this bottom floor of the castle. It's really homey, like it's comfortable. It feels like something that people would actually end up using. But again, it's one of those things. I had a lot of really great reference for some of these rooms. So basically, if a room had reference in the movie, then I've included it in the footage today so that it was a lot easier to decide what was actually going to go in this build versus what wasn't. And the last thing that's going to be included in today's video is the chapel, or the coronation room where Elsa is sworn in. Color-wise for this chapel, it's not my favorite. There is a lot of really deep reds and greens in here and golds that I just don't love the look of, but it's movie reference. So obviously I'm going to stick with whatever they show in the film, but I was very surprised. Again, it was one of those things I just sort of misremembered in my head how it actually ended up looking. So when I went to go pull reference from it, I was so torn about how it came out because on one hand, it really looked a lot like what they were showing in the movie. On the other hand, it felt really off-putting to my general aesthetic, but it's one of those things that I just generally have to ignore. So it's pretty movie accurate. The only thing that I wasn't really able to do is the fact that this place is so clearly has like lots of detailing and hand carving wood panels, and there are multiple levels of like awnings here and walkways where people could like sort of walk above the rest of the chapel area. Even actually, if you go through the movie, this is something that I was very confused about, but if you go to the scenes where Elsa is sworn in, she has like a group of choir members above this little platform area that are singing, and if you look, there is nowhere for them to get up there or get down. There's no staircase, there's no door, so I was confused about that. That's usually something that Disney doesn't mess up in the current movies. It almost looked like they had magically sort of floated up there, but because of the way that The Sims works, it didn't really matter. I wasn't able to get that second awning up top without creating some really faux walkways and like using panels and weird objects to kind of mirror the idea of it. And it wouldn't have looked very good, if I'm honest. It would have just covered a lot of the space visibility-wise for you to be able to see in this location. So I decided to probably skip it and just do a more minimalistic version of what we were seeing in the movies. And so, with all that being said, that is the end of today's video. Thank you so much if you have stayed this long. I know that this was a bit of a longer one, and again, I'm really sorry for the length. I didn't even know what else to cut out of this if I could think about it anymore. So thank you if you've stayed this long. I try not to make videos this long, but you guys also tell me that you enjoy it. And at least for now, I might have one more Frozen themed build coming, and I think it might be the last one of this world. There are some lot replacements that I'm planning on doing that are Frozen themed, but I am going to take a little bit of a break from Frozen and just do something else. But I think the last main Frozen lot is the next one that we're going to move on to. I'm going to be moving on to the neighborhood that's located directly underneath this one that is more of like a modern Asian inspired neighborhood, and there are a lot of commercial lots that are going there. So if you'd like to see any of that, make sure you follow follow me over on Twitch. I go live 3 times a week for the Disney Save, building and create a sim and all that good stuff. I also go live on Friday for Variety Friday, play all sorts of stuff, Stardew Valley, Sea of Thieves, random games that people recommend to me that we try out, and I play with a lot of friends. It's a really good time. If you would like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Hit that little bell icon below to turn on post notifications so you can get updated every single time I post, and I will talk to you all in the next one.